All right, today we're going to be discussing the 12th book in the Odyssey, which is called Sea Perils and Defeat. And I'll give you guys a second here to either open your accessible text PDF to page 45 or to turn to page 9. I believe it's 28. Yep, 928 in your orange literature textbooks. So when we left off on Odysseus's journey, at the end of book 11, Circe, he'd been staying with Circe. He'd been there for a year with his men, and his men had finally run out of patience, really, and decided they wanted to continue on their way back to Ithaca. And so they urge Odysseus to prepare to leave, and he goes to Circe and she says, of course, I'm going to let you leave. I'm not going to hold you here against your will, Odysseus. But before you go, you need to go to the land of death, underworld, to see Hades and Persephone, and they will tell you, they'll show you to the Traceus of Thebes, who's a shade or a prophet, and he's going to let you know what dangers lie ahead of you, and give you a prediction or kind of a prophecy for the future, okay? Because he is a prophet, of course. So that is where we left off. He had gone down to see Hades and Persephone and was going back up to Circe, and he felt very heavy, very weighed down by the things that Traceus of Thebes had warned him of. So we're going to pick up in book 12, again, page 45 of your accessible text PDF or page 928 of your orange textbook. Let's get going. In Book 11, Odysseus and his men visit the underworld where the shades, or spirits of the dead, reside. During Odysseus's visit there, the spirit of the prophet Traceus warns him that death and destruction will follow him unless he and his crew act with restraint and control. And this is important, you guys, because in our invocation, the very beginning of the Odyssey, there was foreshadowing that this was going to happen, that his men would not act with restraint, right? That he would get home alone, but his men would not act with restraint. So this is the prophecy coming true. Tiresias then reveals what Odysseus must do on his return to Ithaca. Odysseus also speaks with the spirit of his mother, who died with grief because Odysseus was away for so long. Odysseus and his men leave the underworld and return to Circe's island. While his men sleep, Circe takes Odysseus aside to hear about the underworld and to offer advice. Okay, so we're going to see Circe kind of give some guidance to Odysseus for what lies ahead. She's going to say there are obstacles ahead of you. Uh, this is what I would suggest. You can do whatever you want, Odysseus, but if you want to get your men home safely, as many men as possible, then you're going to do what I say. But again, it's up to you. You get to choose. All right, let's start reading. Then said the lady Circe, so all those trials are over. Listen with care to this now, and a god will arm your minds. So she's like, pay attention, and a god will help you make the right decision. Square in your ship's paths are sirens, crying beauty to bewitch men coasting by. Woe to the innocent who hears that sound. He will not see his lady nor his children in joy crowding around him, home from sea. The sirens will sing his mind away, on their sweet meadow lolling. There are bones of dead men rotting in a pile beside them, and flayed skins shrivel around the spot. So she's describing to him sirens, which are these mermaids, essentially, and you have probably seen them in lots of different movies or different novels, pieces of fiction that you've read before. Then they don't always look like mermaids. Sometimes they take on different appearances, but they sing. Their voices are what bewitch the people that are going by. So the sirens sing this beautiful song. We see that in the Pirates of the Caribbean. We see it in Odyssey, a couple film versions of that. SpongeBob SquarePants even has sirens singing. And their voices lure the men in, and then essentially the women, the sirens, attack them when they've seduced them with their voices. Okay, let's keep going and find out exactly how they avoid succumbing to the spell, the bewitching voices of the sirens. So Circe says to Odysseus, steer wide, keep well to seaward, plug your oarsmen's ears with beeswax knotted soft. None of the rest should hear that song. Okay, so she says, you got to have your guys plug their ears with beeswax so that they can't hear the song, okay? But she knows Odysseus at this point after a year well enough to be like, I know that you want to prove that you can conquer anything, that you are always willing to beat a challenge. So she says, I know he's going to want to listen. Odysseus is going to want to listen. So I've got to give him a tactic for how he can survive the sirens and not succumb to them as well. Here's what she says. But if you wish to listen, let the men tie you in the lugger, hand and foot, back to the mast, lashed to the mast, so you may hear those harpies' thrilling voices. Shout as you will, begging to be untied. Your crew must only twist more line around you and keep their stroke up till the singers fade. What then? One of two courses you may take, and you yourself must weigh them. I shall not plan the whole action for you now, but only tell you of both. Okay, so she says to him, again, just to recap, gotta plug your guys' ears with beeswax so they can't hear. And Odysseus, I know you want to overcome that temptation of those women, of the sirens' voices, so just have your guys tie you to the mast, and you're gonna want to come down from it, but just tell them that you've got to be tied even tighter when you request to be taken down, so that you don't get lured into those women's voices. Let's keep going. Ahead are beetling rocks and dark blue glancing amphitrite. Surging roars around them. Prowling rocks are drifters. The gods in bliss have named them, and named them well. Not even birds can pass them by. Okay, Amphitrite, just so you guys know, is the goddess of the sea, also the wife of Poseidon. Polyphemus's dad was Poseidon, if you remember that. But here, Circe is actually using the name to refer to the sea itself. Okay, so she's talking about the ocean. A second course lies between headlands. One is a sharp mountain piercing the sky with storm cloud round the peak, dissolving never, not in the brightest summer, to show heaven's azure there, nor in the fall. No mortal man could scale it, nor so much as land there, not with 20 hands and feet, so sheer the cliffs are, as of polished stone. Midway that height, a cavern full of mist opens towards Erebus and evening. Skirting this in the lugger, great Odysseus, your master bowman shooting from the deck would come short of the cave mouth with his shaft. But that is the den of Scylla, where she yaps abominably, a newborn whelp's cry. Okay, so abominably. You guys have probably heard of the abominable snowman, so this terrifying, awful creature, right? Someone that you don't want to mess with. Huge. Let's keep going. Abominably, it says, a newborn's whelp's cry. Though she is huge and monstrous, God or man, no one could look on her in joy. Her legs, and there are 12, are like great tentacles, unjointed, and her serpent necks are borne 6 heads, like nightmares of ferocity, with triple serried rows of fangs and deep gullets of black death. Half her length she sways her head in air, outside her horrid cleft, hunting the sea around that promontory for dolphins, dogfish, or what bigger game thundering amphitrite feeds in thousands. And no ship's company can claim to have passed her without loss and grief. She takes from every ship one man for every gullet. Okay, we'll talk about that here in a second, but let's look back up at the description of Scylla. Such an unpleasant image. Okay, so it talks about her legs. They're like great tentacles. So we could think of this like an octopus. Like her legs are like an octopus, even though there's 12, not just 8. And then her serpent neck, so like snake's necks with 6 heads. Okay, and it talks about her teeth too, serried teeth, I think, are in there, and that reminds us of shark's teeth as well. Right at the end of that passage in line 57, 58, it says, she takes from every ship one man for every gullet. So there are 6 gullets on a ship. So no matter what, when they pass Scylla, this sea monster, she's going to snatch 6 guys from his ship. No matter what, there's nothing that he can do about it. Okay, so that's option 1. Let's keep going. The opposite point seems more a tongue of land you'd touch with a good bow shot at the Narrows. A great wild fig, a shaggy mass of leaves grows on it, and Charybdis lurks below to swallow down the dark sea tide. 3 times from dawn to dusk, she spews it up and sucks it down again 3 times. A whirling maelstrom. If you come upon her, then the god who makes earth tremble could not save you. So she's describing Charybdis, this other obstacle that they have to face. So essentially, they have to choose between sailing closer to Scylla, where they're going to lose 6 guys, or sailing closer to Charybdis. Okay, and Charybdis is described as this maelstrom, which is a violent whirlpool. And it is like something you can't even imagine. So Charybdis sucks down all the water. So anything that's around it gets sucked down into the sea and then spews it like a volcano or a geyser erupting out of the ocean. 3 times a day that happens. If you guys have ever seen a whirlpool, it can crush things against rocks. And this is the whirlpool of all whirlpools. So essentially, Circe is telling Odysseus, if you come upon her, then the god who makes earth tremble could not save you. So anyone that gets close to Charybdis dies. Like the entire ship gets destroyed and everyone on it gets killed. So do we choose to go towards Scylla, who's going to kill 6 men no matter what? Or do we take our chances and go towards Charybdis, where everyone is going to die? Okay? Think about that. She says, no, hug the cliff of Scylla. Take your ship through on a racing stroke. Better to mourn 6 men than lose them all, and the ship too. So her advice ran, but I faced her saying, only instruct me, goddess, if you will. How, if possible, can I pass Charybdis or fight off Scylla when she raids my crew? Okay, so he's like, wait a minute. It's me, Odysseus. I can overcome anything. So how can I do it? How can I not lose my guys and go past Charybdis? And she's like, yeah. She's going to tell him, dude, seriously, this is a battle you can't win. This is where she's telling him you have to choose between the lesser of 2 evils. Have you guys ever been in that situation where both choices were awful and you had to figure out which one was less awful? Sometimes I feel like that when I have to vote in elections, and that's an awful thing to say, but it is the best example that I can give you. I don't feel like I have a good choice or a good option. So which one is the lesser of 2 evils? That is the position that Odysseus is in right now. Someone's going to die. Do I sacrifice 6 of my men to save the majority of them? Or do I sail us towards Charybdis and we all die? Okay? So let's start that again at line 71. So her advice ran, but I faced her saying, only instruct me, goddess, if you will. How, if possible, can I pass Charybdis or fight off Scylla when she raids my crew? Swiftly, the loveliest goddess answered me. Must you have battle in your heart forever, the bloody toil of combat? Old contender, will you not yield to the immortal gods? That nightmare cannot die, being eternal evil itself, horror and pain and chaos. There is no fighting her. No power can fight her. All that avails is flight. Okay, so she's like, all you can do is flee. There's nothing you can do to beat Scylla or Charybdis. Lose headway there along that rock face while you break out arms, and she'll swoop over you, I fear, once more, taking 1 man again for every gullet. No, no, put all your backs into it and row on. Invoke blind force that bore this scourge of men to keep her from a second strike against you. So in other words, she's like, dude, if you try to fight her, she's going to come at you again, and then you've lost 12 guys and not just 6. So why take your chances? Just get through it as fast as you can. Then you will coast through Nacia, the island where Helios's cattle graze. Find herds and flocks of goodly sheep. The herds and flocks are 7, with 50 beasts in each. No lambs are dropped, or calves, and those fat cattle never die. Immortal, too, their cowherds are, their shepherds, Phaethucia and Lampetia, sweetly braided nymphs that divine Neaera bore to the overlord of high noon Helios. These nymphs their gentle mother bred and placed upon through Nacia, the distant land, in care of flocks and cattle for their father. Now, give those kine a wide berth and keep your thoughts intent upon your course for home, and hard seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. But if you raid the beeves, I see destruction for ship and crew. So she's like, if you guys eat, you steal and eat Helios's fine cattle, which are called kine and beeves here, Helios is going to take revenge, you guys. This is not a good thing. So don't let them eat the cows. Don't let them eat the kine and the beeves, okay? Rough years then lie between you and your homecoming, alone and old. The one survivor, all companions lost. So everybody's going to die if they eat the beeves. You're going to be the only one that makes it home. At dawn, Odysseus and his men continue their journey. Odysseus decides to tell the men only of Circe's warnings about the sirens whom they will soon encounter. He's fairly sure they can survive this peril if he keeps their spirits up. Suddenly, the wind stops. The crew were on their feet briskly to furl the sail and to stow it. Then Each in place, they poised the smooth oar blades and sent the white foam scudding by. I carved a massive cake of beeswax into bits and rolled them in my hands until they softened. No long task, for burning heat came down from Helios, lord of high noon. Going forward, I carried wax along the line and laid it thick on their ears. They tied me up then, plumb amidships, back to the mast, lashed to the mast, and took themselves again to rowing. So he did what he was supposed to. He put beeswax in his guy's ears and then had them tie him to the mast. No beeswax in his ears, because of course he wants to listen to those sirens. Let's go. Soon, as we came smartly within hailing distance, the two sirens, noting our fast ship off their points, made ready. And they sang. The lovely voices and ardor appealing over the water made me crave to listen, and I tried to say, "Untie me," to the crew, jerking my brows. But they bent steady to the oars. Then Perimedes got to his feet, he and Eurylochus, and passed more line about to hold me still. So all rowed on until the sirens dropped under the sea rim and their singing dwindled away. My faithful company rested on their oars now, peeling off the wax that I had laid thick on their ears, then set me free. Yes, they made it past the sirens. They did what they were supposed to do. Don't forget, we still got Scylla and Charybdis ahead of us. Let's see what they do. But scarcely had that island faded in blue air than I saw smoke and white water, with sound of waves and tumult, a sound the men heard, and it terrified them. Oars flew from their hands, and the blades went knocking wild alongside till the ship lost way, with no oar blades to drive her through the water. Well, I walked up and down from bow to stern, and trying to put heart into them, standing over every oarsman, saying gently, "Friends, have we never been in danger before this? More fearsome is it now than when the Cyclops penned us in his cave? What power he had! Did I not keep my nerve and use my wits to find a way out for us? Now I say, by hook or crook, this peril too shall be something that we remember. One way or another, we're going to remember this." So he's trying to give them a pep talk here, you guys, and he's going to continue to do that on the next page as well. He's like, "We've been through really bad things before, you guys, and we survived them. We can do this." Keep in mind, though, he has not told them about what lies ahead. He has not told them that 6 guys are going to die, no matter what, and maybe even the entire ship. Why do you think that is? Why would he keep that secret to himself? Is letting them know going to make them work harder, or is it only going to make them more fearful? And does he risk losing everyone when that happens? I think that he was wise in not telling them, because there was absolutely nothing that they could do about it. And he wasn't going to choose who to sacrifice. Scylla was just going to grab 6 guys. And so rather than let his men know what was ahead, he kept that from them to protect them, to shield them a bit. Let's keep going. "Heads up, lads! We must obey the orders as I give them. Get the oar shafts in your hands, and lay back hard on your benches. Hit these breaking seas. Zeus, help us pull away before we founder. You at the tiller, listen, and take in all that I say. The rudders are your duty. Keep her out of the combers and the smoke. Steer for that headland. Watch the drift, or we fetch up in the smother and you drown us." That was all, and it brought them round to action. So his pep talk worked. They're all ready to go fight. They're going to row really hard to get through this as fast as they can. But as I sent them on towards Scylla, I told them nothing, as they could do nothing. They would have dropped their oars again in panic, to roll for cover under the decking. Circe's bidding against arms had slipped my mind, so I tied a McTurus and took up 2 heavy spears, then made my way along to the foredeck, thinking to see her first from there, the monster of the grey rock, harboring torment for my friends. I strained my eyes upon that cliffside veiled in cloud, but nowhere could I catch sight of her. And all this time in travail, sobbing, gaining on the current, we rowed into the strait, Scylla to port, and on our starboard beam Charybdis, dire gorge of the salt sea tide. By heaven, when she vomited, all the sea was like a cauldron seething over intense fire, when the mixture suddenly heaves and rises. The shot spumes soared to the landside heights and fell like rain. But when she swallowed the sea water down, we saw the funnel of the maelstrom, heard the rock bellowing all around, and dark sand raged on the bottom far below. My men all blanched against the gloom. Our eyes were fixed upon that yawning mouth in fear of being devoured. Can you imagine what this looks like, you guys? I'm going to try to share a link with you at the end of this unit so that you can watch the Odyssey online if you choose to. I'm not obviously going to require it, but we would do it in class. So this is something terrifying for them, like what they're experiencing, and they're probably shaking. That's why they become pale and they're not real sure what to do. And Scylla hasn't struck yet. She's going to do that right now. Let's keep going. Then Scylla made her strike, whisking 6 of my best men from the ship. I happened to glance aft at ship and oarsmen and caught sight of their arms and legs dangling high overhead. Voices came down to me in anguish, calling my name for the last time. A man surf casting on a point of rock for bass or mackerel whipped his long rod to drop the sinker and the bait far out, will hook a fish and rip it from the surface to dance wriggling through the air. So these were borne aloft in spasms toward the cliff. She ate them as they shrieked there in her den, in the dire grapple, reaching still for me. And deathly pity ran me through at that sight, far the worst I have ever suffered, questing the passes of the strange sea. So he describes Scylla as like a fisherman, like just like casting out this line and plucking those guys out of the ship, like, oh, here's one, I'm getting a fish, like kind of fly fishing a little bit, but actually catching every time she throws the fly fishing rod in. That's what's being described there with that simile. Okay. And it is heartbreaking to hear Odysseus talk about how his guys are begging him and calling his name to save them, and there's nothing he can do. We rowed on. The rocks were now behind, Charybdis too, and Scylla dropped astern. Odysseus tries to persuade his men to bypass Thrinacia, the island of the sun god Helios, but they insist on landing. Driven by hunger, they ignore Odysseus's warning not to feast on Helios's cattle. This disobedience angers the sun god, who threatens to stop shining if payment is not made for the loss of his cattle. To appease Helios, Zeus sends down a thunderbolt to sink Odysseus's ship. Odysseus alone survives. He eventually drifts to Ogygia, the home of Calypso, who keeps him on her island for 7 years. And with this episode, Odysseus ends the telling of his tale to King Alcinous. So he warned them, don't eat the cattle, but they did it anyway. And the sun was going to stop shining. Helios said, Zeus, if you don't do something, I'm going to make the sun stop shining. And that was going to cause the world to disappear, right? So he had no choice. Zeus had no choice except to sink the ship, and everyone on it except Odysseus dies. Okay, so that's that prophet being foretold, that prophecy that Traces of Thebes had said would happen. But also think about the curse from Polyphemus that he had asked Poseidon to put on them, that Odysseus wouldn't get home. But if he did get home, it would be a really hard journey, and he'd be the only one to survive. Until next time.